In tonight's story, betrayal runs deep, but revenge runs deeper. You're listening to Revenge with Jack, where justice always finds its way. Congratulations to Logan, I said, and the words scraped my throat like sand. My name is Noah Reyes. I am 44, and I had just watched 5 years of my life unhooked from my chest and pinned to a 23-year-old kid who'd been at Raven Park Logistics for all of 3 months. Logan grinned the way the newly blessed do, wide, certain, a little dazzled by the light. Around the table, people clapped. I clapped too. The conference room smelled like stale coffee and ambition left out overnight. It had that hush of shared pretending, the sound of adults agreeing not to name the obvious thing. At the head of the table stood Graham Patterson, chest lifted like a rooster greeting morning. Logan's going to do great things as our new regional operations director, he said, and the title slid across the table, soft as a silk rope, landing in front of the wrong pair of hands. The same role I'd been training toward since 2019. The same role I'd been promised when old Henderson retired. I kept my face steady, my hands folded over the notebook where I'd written numbers and names for years. Inside, something cold clicked into place where hope used to keep a small light on. Logan was Graham's nephew. Everyone knew it. Nobody said it. The kid had fresh ink on his business degree and that buoyant confidence you get when doors open before you touch them. For 3 months he'd sat beside me while I negotiated vendor contracts, balanced supply lines across 4 states, and coaxed stubborn equipment back to life from 400 miles away. He watched. He nodded. He asked neat, harmless questions. Now he was my boss. Reyes has been invaluable in getting Logan up to speed, Graham added. Like that ribbon of praise could tie shut what was already split open. 5 years of spotless reviews. 60-hour weeks. Sacrifices recorded only by my daughter's quiet eyes. All of it recast as a training program for someone else's future. I nodded anyway. Happy to help, I said, and my voice sounded like it belonged to a well-behaved man. The meeting ended in a shuffle of chairs and congratulations. People filed past, murmuring the same congratulations to Logan they might have said to me last month, last year. I gathered my pen and notepad slower than usual, as if moving carefully could keep the room from tilting. My mind felt wakeful and clean, the kind of sharp that comes at 3 a.m. when the answer you've been avoiding stands at the foot of your bed and refuses to leave. At the door, Graham touched my sleeve. Noah, hang back a minute. The room emptied. He loosened his tie, tilted his head into a sympathetic angle he must have practiced in a mirror. I know this might come as a surprise, he said, but Logan brings fresh perspectives. New energy. Sure, I said. You understand, right? It's nothing personal. I looked at the thinning hair combed across his scalp like a careful lie. I thought of how he'd inherited his own chair when a relative stepped down. The irony sat between us, patient and bright. I understand perfectly, I said. He smiled, relieved. I knew you'd be professional. That's why you're so valuable, Noah. Valuable, but not chosen. The word rang in the empty room, tinny and small. I slipped my notebook under my arm and walked back to my desk through a sea of ringing phones and tapping keys. The world kept humming. I sat, opened my laptop, and let the first clear thought of the day guide my hands. Graham shut the door with a practiced softness, the way people do when they want to sound kind while delivering something sharp. He perched on the edge of the table, tie unknotted, sleeves pushed to the middle of his forearms like a man about to help carry a couch he has no intention of lifting. Fresh perspectives, he said again, warming to the phrase. New energy. Words that smell good in presentations, that photograph well in quarterly reports. Words that never show up at 2 a.m. when a truck is broken down outside El Paso and a client's line will stop at dawn if you don't think of 3 solutions before your coffee cools. Sure, I said, because I've learned that sometimes agreement is another kind of silence. He searched my face for a flare of trouble and, finding none, brightened. Nothing personal, he added, as if that were a bomb and not a blade. In certain companies, the mid-market ones that grow fast and hire faster, nothing personal is how they bless decisions that have fingerprints all over them. I thought of a statistic I once read. 4 in 10 workers believe family ties matter more than merit where they work. I remember laughing then. I wasn't laughing now. After he dismissed me, I walked the familiar loop past the framed safety awards and the 4-state map marked with our warehouse pins. 2019 wasn't far away. I could still feel the ache of that year. A divorce finalized with polite signatures, an apartment that echoed when Lena wasn't there, my toothbrush alone in a cup. Raven Park had looked like a clean ledger. Manufacturing logistics was unglamorous, but it was honest. Inventory in, inventory out, relationships maintained, problems solved. Graham hired me himself, shook my hand, called me the right people. He said there was room to grow. I believed him because I wanted to believe in something that didn't leave. I became the right people. Weekends on the dock when shipments slipped. Evenings in cheap hotel rooms near Phoenix. Laptop glow on my face while I wrote contingency plans. My reviews read like a neat row of green lights. Graham's smile always arrived right on time. Management material, he'd say, pressing the promise into my palm like a coin. Be patient. Patience is a virtue until it's a leash. Lena, at 16, had already learned to read my shoulders. Dad, it's Saturday, she'd remind me, pushing a plate of pancakes across the table as I answered emails with my thumb. Her mother's new husband coached. I coordinated, but I never missed her plays. I sent the money on time. We made a quiet deal with each other. I'll keep building, you keep dreaming. 6 months ago, the first small crack appeared. Graham mentioned his nephew possibly joining. A casual comment in a hallway. Smart kid. Just graduated UT, business degree. I pictured a desk in operations, a rotation through the warehouse, mistakes made cheap while someone older corrected them. That's how you learn in this world. Skin in, skin thickened. But Logan skipped the ground. He arrived airlifted, title pinned, office beside Graham's. Observing, not carrying. Listening, not lifting. I kept training him anyway. Because that is what pros do. Because my name is my work and my work is the part of me no one gets to steal. Logan learned by leaning. He sat in on my vendor calls, his pen moving in neat rows while I translated shortages into timelines, and timelines into trust. He watched me turn a missed delivery into a make good into loyalty. Yes, ma'am, he'd say to Janet at Morrison Dynamics. We're on it. And look at me for the how. I gave him the how because that's what you do when someone's handed to you as a shadow. You show them where the light falls. He was respectful, even grateful. Thank you, sir. Like he'd been raised to keep doors open and voices low. The problem wasn't Logan. The problem was gravity. Things were tilted from the start. 3 weeks into his observing, I stayed late to finish quarterly reports. Numbers that tell a story if you care to read it. Raven Park after hours is a soft hum. Cleaning crew tires squeaking, a distant forklift beep, the vending machines lonely whir. I was headed to the break room for burnt coffee when I heard Graham's voice through his cracked door, the carpeted hallway carrying it like a rumor that wanted to be true. The board's going to ask questions, he said. Logan's only been here 2 months. Another voice answered. Older, weighty, the kind of voice that signs checks and speaks in plural. James Mercer from corporate, I guessed. You told us Reyes was ready, he said. Solid track record. Reyes is reliable, Graham replied. And there was a smile inside the word that didn't reach kindness. But Logan is family. And he's got the degree. The board likes degrees. What about Reyes's experience? Graham's laugh wasn't cruel. It was worse, casual, confident. He'll keep doing what he does, make good money, hold the line. He's not executive material. He'll fall in line. Silence draped the hallway. I stood very still and felt the sentence land on me like a saddle. He'll fall in line. Not a prediction, a plan. Because men like me have daughters and payments and calendars spotted with school plays we refuse to miss. Because we are the dependable ones, the ones who make chaos boring. The math of it was so tidy it almost impressed me. They kept talking, Henderson's retirement, optics for the board, timelines. My name shuffled among their words like a paperclip. Useful, interchangeable, unremarkable. I stepped back on quiet feet. Returned to my desk. Saved my file. Powered down the screen that had been my small, blue-lit church for years. Drove home without music. Sleep didn't come. I lay in the dark apartment listening to the refrigerator tick and the city exhale. My ex-wife's old words floated up like something you forgot to pack. You let people walk over you, Noah. Stand up for yourself. I had argued then. I didn't argue now. A statistic I'd once skimmed flared in my mind. Meritocracy feels real until it collides with lineage. Then it becomes etiquette. The truth was simple and sharp. I wasn't a liability. I was leverage. And they believed leverage doesn't move. At 4:07 a.m., I sat at the kitchen table, laptop closed, hands flat against the wood. I pictured a horse bending to the bit, the quiet in its eyes. I pictured Lena, 16 and fierce, telling her friends I might be a director soon. I pictured Graham's relieved smile when I said I understood. I did understand, just not in the way he hoped. I printed the letter at 4:27 p.m. and watched the paper slide out of the tray like a quiet verdict. By 4:30, I was at Graham's door, 2 knocks, and then the handle, because after 5 years you know a man's rhythms. He was fresh from touring the warehouse with Logan, pointing at forklifts like a general reviewing troops. I handed him the envelope. This is my 2 weeks' notice. Confusion crossed his face first, then the sharp blink of disbelief. He tore the flap with his thumb, eyes moving fast, back and forth like a metronome trying to hurry his song. Is this a joke? He asked. No, sir. You can't be serious. You're leaving because Logan got the promotion. I let the question hang. Sometimes silence is a mirror you offer people so they can watch themselves talk. He stood, started pacing, hands on his hips, the posture of a man arranging furniture no one asked him to move. Noah, let's be reasonable. 5 years of building, and you walk away? Over feelings? It's not smart. I've made my decision. He shifted gears. What about Lena? Your responsibilities. There it was, the soft iron he thought kept me tethered. The assumption baked into middle management that men with mortgages and daughters will exchange dignity for stability indefinitely. I'll manage, I said. His mouth tightened. You realize how this looks? Quitting because you didn't get promoted? Unprofessional. Childish. It's strange how quickly language can be stripped of history. 5 years of spotless reviews suddenly collapsed into a tantrum. Weekends and midnight fixes now rebranded as entitlement. I can see how you'd think that, I said, and I could. Stories are easier when the protagonist is petty. He went colder. I won't give you a good reference. You understand? Walk out like this, leave us hanging? No company wants a firefighter who refuses a fire. Something steadied in me. When people threaten to revise your value, it helps to remember who watched you work at 2 a.m. and who slept. That's your choice, I said. He tried one more costume change. Look, I like you. You're good. But Logan brings vision. The board wants innovation, not maintenance. Vision, I echoed, gentle as a pin. And me? Experience. Stability. He offered the words like consolation prizes. Valuable enough to train him. Not valuable enough to be him, I said, and he flinched because math spoken out loud can sound ungenerous. Take the weekend, he urged, palms open. Come back Monday, and we'll forget this. I'll finish my 2 weeks, I said, and I'll train Logan on anything he needs to know. He scoffed. You think he needs training from someone who quits? He'll need vendor histories, contract nuances, emergency protocols, unless you plan to carry those yourself. That landed. He knew the limits of his own map. Fine, he said finally. 2 weeks. But don't expect favors. You're burning bridges, Noah. Maybe, I said, but they weren't leading where I wanted to go. I walked out lighter than I had in months. The office was thinning toward weekend. Logan sat at his desk, studying org charts like they hid a secret door. I opened my laptop and began to write. Not a resignation anymore, but a field guide. Contacts, escalation trees, failover plans, the little tricks you only learn by failing in private and fixing it before morning. Not for Graham. For the people who would pay for our mistakes if I didn't. My phone buzzed. Lena, dinner tomorrow? I want to hear about your week. I typed back, absolutely. I've got news. The good kind. The kind where you stop asking for a chair at someone else's table and build your own. Monday arrived before the sun, and I was already in the parking lot when the sky softened from slate to pearl. Inside, the air felt brighter than it should have, like the bulbs had been turned up to hide a bruise. Logan was at his desk with 3 monitors lit, eyes red, a pen tucked behind his ear like a white flag. He looked up when I set my coffee down. Morning, I said. Thank God, he whispered. Morrison Dynamics is threatening to cancel. Something about delayed titanium brackets out of Tucson. Their procurement manager, Janet Morales, wants an answer by noon or she's pulling the quarterly order. I leaned over his shoulder. The email thread was a thicket, reply-alls, nested attachments, a calendar's worth of promises. He'd opened 3 supplier contracts that had nothing to do with the brackets. I could see he'd been wandering the forest, looking for a path and finding only more trees. Okay, I said. Breathe. Start with the last confirmed ship date and walk backward. He scrolled. Last confirmed was 2 Fridays ago. Partial shipment. Right. I pulled up my own files from the documentation I'd been compiling. Tucson metals for the brackets, desert transit for the hull, and a Friday cutoff on Morrison's dock. Remember, their line runs just in time on Mondays, no cushion. When a Friday misses, Monday burns. He nodded, taking notes like he could catch water with paper. I called Tucson Metals and spoke to Rosa, who'd saved me more than once by rerouting machining time after hours. We can spin a short run if we get the revised specs by 10, she said. Desert Transit picked up on the first ring. I asked for Marco and got him to slot a rush with a driver who knew Morrison's dock manager by name. Then I called Janet. We're not going to make you whole with apologies, I told her. But you'll have 40% by this afternoon, 60 by tomorrow noon. I'll email the truck ID and ETA in 10. She exhaled. That's the voice I needed, Noah. Thank you. I hung up and showed Logan the skeleton underneath the save. Backup networks, informal favors accrued over 4 years, the rhythm of people who would move heaven for you if you've once moved a pallet for them without being asked. This isn't magic, I said. It's memory and the humility to write things down. He stared at the screen like it was a map that finally had north on it. How do you keep track of all of this? Documentation, I said, tapping the shared folder, and answering the phone when it's inconvenient. By lunch, Morrison was back from the ledge. But the calls kept coming. Copperfield Fabrication asking whether our bearings were still stuck at the border, Border States Machinery requesting a contingency for a crane part held up in Albuquerque, a hospital vendor wanting timeline certainty for a sterilizer pump. Different nouns, same question, do we trust you? I answered honestly, which is another way of saying quickly, specifically, and with my name attached. And I saw the truth I'd been circling for weeks. Org charts don't keep freight moving. People do. Relationships are the arteries. We can call it supply chain all day, but at heart it's a promise chain. Who shows up when a hinge fails at midnight and how fast? Logan watched, writing furiously. This is more than strategy, he said. It's stewardship, I replied. You don't own any of it. You tend it, or it dies. By Tuesday morning, the crisis smoke had thinned, and with it came the theater. Graham called me into his office, eyes rimmed, the smile lined on like stage makeup. I've been thinking, he began, which is what people say when they've been warned. There's room for both you and Logan in management. Associate director for you. He'll take point on strategy. You'll handle the technical side. Associate director. A title shaped like a hand on your head, pressing you down while calling it support. That's generous, I said, because sometimes the truth wants a soft landing. But I'll keep my original plan. The smile snapped. You're making a mistake you'll regret. I left without arguing. You don't negotiate with someone who rescues the ladder after you've already stepped off the roof. By Wednesday night, I had 3 interviews scheduled, calls set up across the small world of the Southwest's industrial arteries. I wasn't a rumor, I was a signal. The first conversation was with Silvaline Energy, renewables, smart inventory, fewer speeches, more verbs. Daniel Sue had been trying to poach me for 2 years, always with the same calm pitch. When you're ready to build something that looks like you, call me. I finally did. We met Thursday morning in an office that smelled like cardboard and tea. No framed aphorisms, just a whiteboard covered in routes, lead times, and a cartoon sun wearing sunglasses. Daniel shook my hand and didn't pretend he was doing me a favor. I heard you might be in play, he said. We've been wanting to break into heavy components. Morrison Dynamics, Copperfield Fabrication, Border States Machinery. We know who trusts you. We're offering Regional Operations Director. He let the title sit there, unadorned. 30% above your current base. Better health. A real budget. And autonomy measured in outcomes, not optics. I exhaled, and didn't realize until then that I'd been holding my breath for months. I need to finish my 2 weeks. Of course, he said. And Noah, no non-compete on our end. I assume you haven't signed one where you are. I haven't, I said. We both knew what that meant. In our industry, clients aren't property. Trust isn't patented. You serve well, they follow if they want. It's not theft. It's gravity. We sat with a legal pad between us and drew circles. Morrison's JIT tolerances, Copperfield's seasonal pivots, Border States emergency protocols. He didn't ask me to share anything that wasn't mine to share. He asked about relationships, not secrets, names that answered when I called because I'd shown up at 1 a.m. with a solution and a spare ratchet strap. "We'll earn them," he said. "You'll just open the door." I thought of Lena and the way she checks my face first when I walk into a room, measuring weather. I thought of the quiet, clean feeling that had moved into my chest the day I printed my letter. "I'm in," I said, and felt the words click home like a bolt finding its thread. Friday afternoon, Graham tried one last time to rearrange the story. "I hear you're interviewing with competitors," he said, accusation dressed as concern. I said nothing. I didn't need to. The bus had already arrived, and I was standing on the step. The meeting invitation from Graham arrived without subject line, which felt right. We sat across from each other, the blinds half closed, the light striping his desk like a barcode. Logan occupied the corner chair, elbows on his knees, eyes on the carpet. A kid caught between family and fact. "I'm hearing you're interviewing with competitors," Graham began, voice even, the practiced tone of a man who believes tone is 9/10 of truth. "While you're still employed here. While you're training Logan. That's a conflict of interest." I let the accusation hover until it lost some heat. "I'm finishing my notice. I'm doing the handoff." He leaned forward. "It's also corporate espionage. Sharing proprietary information." "I haven't shared anything proprietary," I said. "Relationships aren't trade secrets. Our clients are our property," he snapped, color rising. "You take my clients, and we'll sue you for everything you're worth." Logan flinched at I didn't. I'd heard the possession in him for years. "My team, my region, my call. They're not yours, Graham. They're people. I serve them well. They'll choose where to spend their money. If they follow me, it'll be because I showed up when it mattered." He stood, as if height could fix narrative. "You walk out that door with our book, I'll make sure you never work in this industry again." I stayed seated. "I gave you 5 years of midnights and clean audits," I said quietly. "I trained your nephew to do the job you promised me. I'm finishing this transition. What happens after depends on how you choose to act." For the first time, he faltered. The room tightened with the sound of his options shrinking. "Uncle," Logan said carefully, "maybe." "Not now," Graham cut in, gaze fixed on me. "We'll see about all of this." I nodded and rose. At the door, I turned to Logan. "If you need help this week, ask. I want the team steady." He gave a small, grateful nod. The smallest things we choose to be, useful, kind, exact, are sometimes the only things that belong to us. The final week became a field surgery of memory. I built a living map, vendor hierarchies, escalation tiers, the odd truths you only learn by bleeding once. Like how Morrison's dock manager will wave a late truck through if the driver mentions her grandson's Little League team, or how Desert Transit can pull a miracle if you call Marco before 6. I recorded failure modes and fixes. When this sprocket jams, check that valve. When the data looks wrong, call Rosa because her numbers are always right. Not because Graham deserved the rescue, but because the line workers and schedulers and nurses at the end of these deliveries deserved not to pay for a feud they didn't start. On Friday, I cleaned my drawer, a stapler, 2 pens that still wrote, a photo of Lena at 12 with cake on her nose. I shook hands, hugged a few, promised the kind of contact you mean even if you never use it. At the front desk, I placed my badge in the little gray tray. It looked small there, like a toy. "This isn't over," Graham said behind me, voice low. "For me, it is," I answered. I wasn't angry. I was finished. Outside, the afternoon heat lifted off the asphalt in waves. I stood for a moment with the keys in my hand and listened to the quiet inside myself. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I'd missed the old routes, the familiar faces, the comfort of being indispensable. Maybe, but it would be my mistake to make. 6 months later, Daniel Sue slid a trade magazine across his desk like a postcard from a country I'd stopped visiting. "You'll want to see this," he said. The cover headline didn't bother with makeup. Raven Park Logistics hemorrhages clients. Board probes family hiring. The article read like a map of consequences. Morrison Dynamics and Copperfield Fabrication had walked. Border States Machinery was re-evaluating suppliers. Revenue in the Southwest region down 60%. The board had opened a formal investigation into management practices and potential conflicts. Graham Patterson, terminated. Logan, resigned, enrolled in grad school. A footnote noted a breach of contract suit from Morrison after a supply chain failure burned $2 million into smoke. I set the magazine on the table between us and felt, not triumph, not even relief, more like weather changing. 3 of their remaining accounts called this week, Daniel added, eyes kind. They asked for you by name. He didn't press. He didn't have to. We were already busy, routes tightened, warehouses humming, a team that did not need speeches because we were too busy delivering promises in crates. Silverline wasn't glamorous. It was competent, and competence makes its own kind of light. The universe has a strange sense of timing. A year from my resignation, I was in Tucson on a 2-day swing, hungry and tired, when I ducked into a diner near the airport with a neon sign that said PIE like it meant it. Logan sat in a corner booth with a textbook open and a highlighter uncapped. He looked up and startled into a smile that had lost its baby teeth. Noah, he said, standing halfway, unsure. Mind if I sit? I asked. Please, he said, and pushed over a menu. The textbook's spine read Supply Chain Management in block letters. He tapped it, sheepish. I figured I should actually learn the job I was supposed to do. That's smart, I said. The coffee came. He wrapped both hands around the mug like it was winter. I wanted to thank you, he said, for how you handled everything. You could have left me to drown. You didn't. You were thrown into deep water you didn't choose, I said. Most of us know how that feels. He watched the steam lift. My uncle still blames you, he said softly. Says you sabotaged the company. What do you think? I asked. He closed the book. I think I was 23 and unqualified. I think my last name opened a door I shouldn't have walked through. And I think you spent 5 years earning something that should have been yours. He met my eyes without flinching. I'm sorry. We ate pie. I paid. Before I left, I told him the truth I'd learned too late. The work will humble you if you let it. That's the good news. 6 months after that, I heard Graham had filed for bankruptcy. His wrongful termination suit fizzled in papers no one reads twice. Logan graduated with honors and took a real entry-level role in Phoenix, where he learned the business the way the business wants to be learned, on warehouse floors, under bad lighting, with good people who show you where the wrenches live. 2 years later, he earned his first promotion. No shortcuts. No uncle. People like to say revenge is a dish served cold. I don't think it's a dish at all. It's a door. You close the one that keeps you small, and you walk through the one with your name on it. Sometimes the loudest justice is the quiet life you build afterward.